Well, you can probably tell what today's episode's going to be about. It's about my passion for motorcycling and how that came to be, and some of the things that have happened, and some of the stories I have about being on a bike. So I'll shut this thing off and be right back with you. Here we go. I got off the bike, and it's just me and the fish sitting here talking to you about motorcycle stories. So I think the first story I want to tell you about is my first time that I was on a motorcycle. This happened in I don't even know what year. I was probably 11 or 12. It was in Platteville, Colorado. We came out on vacation one year, and I don't know, 12. But anyway, my brother had a Honda 90 Trail, and we had brought out on the trip with us, and he was riding it all up and down my uncle's property there, and it was a couple acres, and my sister and I moseyed out where he was riding around circles and stuff. And I don't know if he was street legal or not, but anyway, we went over there to see what he was doing, and he's riding back and forth. And so he asked us if we want to ride it, and we're like, sure. And so he tells my sister, she goes first, and he says, now, don't get out of first gear. Didn't show us how to change gears or anything. Don't get out of first gear and go down to that tree, turn around, stop and turn around and come back to me in first gear. And that's all I really want you to do. Anyway, she goes down to the tree in first gear, put, and goes down the tree, stops, turns around, comes back, put, first gear. And he said, good, get off the bike. My brother was kind of pushy about that stuff. He had reason to. But so it was my turn, and he says, now go down there in first gear, come back. Okay. So I get on the bike, and I says, well, how do you change gears if you want to? And he shows me. He says, I don't want you to do it. Okay. So I take off, and I hit first, hit second, hit third, and the trail 90, I was flying by the time I got to the tree. I skidded around the tree. I came back, flying, and I came back. I went whizzing by him. He was so mad he couldn't get me. He couldn't pull me off the bike because I'd crash his bike and it was his. So I come whipping around, and I came back to him and skidded in front of him, put the kickstand down. He says, "You are never riding my motorcycle again." And I said, "It's okay. It was worth it." So I was kind of a rebel from the get-go. But that was that story, how I got started. So another story is we were, my dad, one of the best things my dad ever did to me was he bought me a motorcycle when I was 13. He said, all you have to do is make payments and it's yours. I don't care what you pay me every month, but you got to pay me something. I'm like, great, Dad, thanks. And a 73 Honda CB350. I love that bike. And $500 is what he paid for it. And it was a lot of money back then. So I was riding it up and down the driveway and stuff, and I'm like, this is great. So I'll pause right there because we'd taken on a trip in Ludington, Michigan, and with the family. And my brother has a Triumph at that time, I think, and my dad has a Honda CB500, a four-cylinder, and I had this little 350. So my brother, my dad, and I go for a ride in Ludington, a long ride, and we're coming back to where we're staying at, and it's nighttime, and we didn't time it too well, and it was dark. And all of a sudden, we're cruising down this beach road, I think we're on Lake Michigan. And dang, if my bike didn't quit. It was dark, and my bike quit. So I pull over the side. Well, there goes my brother and my dad. And I'm like, great, now I'm here alone. I don't know anything about these these things. So by the road, and I'm like thinking, well, they'll come back. I'm sure of it. Well, they didn't. So I'm like, okay, it was a full moon, no power to the bike. I ended up opening up the seat and taking the manual out and starting to read it, and it said in the manual, if your bike quits altogether, it's probably a fusible link, and well, if you need to find the fusible link, here's where it's located, here's an extra one on the bike. And I'm like, okay. So I find it, and I said, this is where it plugs in at, and I pulled the old one out, put the other one in, and this took a half an hour, 45 minutes. And just as I put the manual back, shut the seat, and turn on the key, headlight, boom, bike starts up. Right when the bike starts up, here comes my brother and my dad. And they pull up, what the heck's wrong with you? And I said, well, the bike quit. Explained it to them. And they said, well, how did it just started? And I said, no, I changed the fusible link. And they looked at me like like they're looking at a 13-year-old kid, like, how on earth did you figure that one out? But I figured it out, and away we went. But what was interesting about that story is later on in my life, when I like within the last 10 years, I've been talking to the Lord about that. And I didn't even know it, but he was with me on that trip, and he was the one showing me how to fix the bike, and it was incredible. But anyway, that was an early story. Old CB350 was. I didn't make any payments on it. Remember, he told me he'd make some payments on it, and it's yours. And what he didn't know is I had money downstairs already, but it wasn't from my paper route. And I didn't want him to know that I had the money, so I was going to make payments, $25 a month or something. Dang, if I didn't forget to do that. And I went out to check on the bike out in the garage, and it was gone. And I came back in, ran back in the house, and said, Mom, my motorcycle is gone. I think it's stolen. She says, you better call your dad. So I called Dad at work, and I said, Dad, my bike is gone. And he said, yep, it is. And I said, where is it? He said, well, I sold it to a guy at work. You didn't make any payments. So I got rid of it. And didn't warn me or anything. Let me tell you something. I never was late on a payment again the rest of my life. And years and years after that, I bought a big 1800cc motorcycle, a big cruiser. And I brought it over to his house to show him, and he was like 80 years old and could barely get his leg over the bike to sit on it, but he did, and we started it and everything, and he sure liked the bike. He said, what size is it? And I said, oh, it's an 1800. That's a pretty big bike. I said, you know what the best part about this bike is, Dad? And he said, what's that? And I said, you can't take it away from me. Isn't that funny? He says, oh, you still remember that? And I said, I do. I said, it was an awful tough lesson to learn. He said, well, it was a good lesson for you to learn. That's the way my dad talked. I've got all sorts of things that happen on motorcycles. It's hard to cover in 15 minutes, right? But some of the story, one of the good stories that I had, I think they're all good, but one of which was when I was going to Sturgis every year, and had been for like 12 years running, and going for the motorcycles and talking to the builders, and you could see as much as you want at Sturgis, but I didn't go for that. So I was concerned about going to it anymore because I was getting closer to the Lord. And the Lord said to me, go ahead and go. Go ahead and go to Sturgis. And I'm like, all right. So I jump on my bike and away I go. And I get to Sturgis and pitch a tent and all that. And I always used to stay in a tent. And so I'm coming, I parked my bike in downtown, and it's getting dark, and looking at all the bars are lit up and everything. Those of you who've been to Sturgis know what I'm talking about. Well, there's a area there where the Hells Angels are. And I was in, my full leather outfit. And this is my dual sport outfit, by the way. Different than cruiser outfit. But I saw the Hells Angels where they were hanging out at, and on Main Street. And there was this big dude in front of them, like bigger than me. He was 6'5", 6'6", maybe even 6'7", I don't know. Pretty well built, and he's sitting on his bike. Looks like he's been there forever. But redheaded dude. I'm like, the Lord says to me, you need to go talk to that guy, and I want you to say that I'm pleased with him. And I'm like, Lord, you're pleased with a Hell's Angel? Really? You asked me to do this? Apparently this is why you wanted me to go to Sturgis. So, I go, oh boy. So I go up to the guy and I'm like, hey man, I am chasing the Lord, and I'm just trying to be the man he's called me to be. And by the way, he wants me to say something to you. Are you okay with me telling you? And the guy said, okay. I was shocked that he said okay. And I said, he's well pleased with you. And this guy starts to kind of melt in front of me. And he puts his head down, and he's wiping his face. And he says, thank you for that. I said, oh, you're welcome. He said, 3 days ago, the Lord told me to ride right here and pray for the Hells Angels behind me. Just pray for them. And not to leave until you get the word. I didn't know what that meant. He said, I don't know what that meant. But I've been standing here for 3 days in the sun praying for these guys out in front of their booth. And thank you for relieving me. And I'm like, wow, that is really cool. So I continued on with that trip. But I've been riding most of my life for all different reasons. And I did talk about this in an episode before, but in between my 1.0 and getting my 2.0, I developed a tremendous amount of anger. And it seemed like every time I threw my leg over the bike and took off, I had to focus on the bike. And well, that led to focusing on the Lord and what he has for me. The craziest thing happened. I was on a ride with my friend Dave one time, and my daughter and I weren't getting along too well. And I was so tired of doing the wrong thing with her. It just seemed like every direction that I took with her, it was wrong. And I was really trying hard to reconcile that relationship. And so my friend and I went on this motorcycle ride, and we went, it was a week long, something like that. But it was in Colorado, Utah. We kind of did a circle. Anyway, before I went on that trip, I prayed. I said, Lord, help me. I want to hear any quiet talk. I want to hear this loud and clear. Tell me what I need to do with my daughter. And I don't want to guess, right? So I prayed that. And I almost forgot that I prayed about that before I left. And so we took off on a ride and had a great ride. We were camping in tents and stuff. Dual sport riding this time. And we were coming back. We're on the back end of the trip. We pulled up to this place. I think we were up on the flat tops in Colorado. And we pulled into this place, and we're riding in circles trying to find a good campsite. We keep going by this old 53 motorhome or something. Very cool looking motorhome. Anyway, so we finally land at a campsite and we parked the bikes. It was dark. And we parked the bikes and we're pitching the tent. This guy from this other campsite, once we got our tents loaded up, this guy comes up to our campsite and this guy says, "So I got a word from the Lord that one of you guys is having problems with his daughter. Which one of you is it?" My friend goes, "Yeah, it's him." Thanks a lot. So we stop and we chat. He and I chat by campfire. And we chat for an hour or two about it. Great words of wisdom. And I was able to take away from that a great deal. And I came back from that trip, and it was loud and clear what I needed to do. And that really started our reconciliation. And I did what that guy suggested. I was getting the word from the Lord anyway, but this guy was loud and clear, man, what I need to do. I thought that was pretty unique. That happened on a motorcycle. But a lot of the trips were working out my anger, praying, thinking. When you're on a motorcycle, it's kind of like being at a movie. You know, you forget about everything else, and then when the movie's done, you're back to thinking about all the things that are going wrong or something. But motorcycles kind of that way. You have to focus a lot and process things a lot, but there's lots of time if you're on a long trip to process things. And I worked out a lot of my anger with the Lord, not just with the Lord, but with everybody around me, and mostly the anger about myself. I was angry that I had destroyed a lot of relationships in my life, and I was not happy about that. So it started moving into forgiveness and what that looked like. But the motorcycle has always been a tool for me to help me work through things. If I need to clear my head, I go ride on the motorcycle and it clears me. But I've been all different kind of places on it, you know. So every time I see a new place, it seems like the Lord's telling me something about that place. But don't think it has been easy on a motorcycle riding around the country. You know, I've hit an elk before down in southern Colorado. I hit a quail, hit me in the face, and if I didn't have my helmet on, it'd have killed me. But you always take a certain amount of risk with a motorcycle. But I really felt like Jesus has been with me the whole time. Even if I wasn't following him, he was with me. So it's a pretty unique tool to help me grow in my relationship with the Lord. I think that's a pretty good takeaway from this. I think I'm going to end this episode here. And I think that another takeaway is if you have tools or need a tool to help you connect with the Lord, pray about it. All of us have passions for stuff. If you have a bicycle you're passionate about, I'm sure that you can connect with the Lord on the bicycle. I connect on my motorcycle. I connect on my electric bicycle. I really feel like he wants us to have fun when we're connecting with him. He wants it to be a positive experience, and he wants your heart open to be able to connect with him. And if your heart's not open, it's hard to connect with him. Thank you for joining today, talking about motorcycles and talking about how I got that passion. So it's been pretty fun. Thanks.